Here we go. Here we are interviewing Irene Avonelle Johnson Hawke in late September of 2021. How you doing?
I'm doing just great.
Okay. So this is going to be a series of interviews about you and your life. So we might as well start at the beginning. Okay. So where were you born?
I was born in Pima County, Tucson, Arizona,
And when? What was your birthday?
January 24th, 1924.
About almost 100 years ago.
Well, it was 59 years after the end of the Civil War.
There you go. Okay. And I think, I looked it up, and I think you mentioned Dad said that at that time there were probably 20,000 people in Tucson.
That's what we guess.
Yeah, about 20, 25,000.
About.
Okay. So tell me about your mother. What was her name?
Her name was Irene Elizabeth Tonner Johnson, and she was born in Wheeling, West Virginia, to Edward Alexander Tonner and Janie Ora Evans Tonner.
So they moved, when did they move to Tucson, do you know?
Well, no, not really. They moved from West Virginia, I don't know, she was still either an infant or a young child, to Pennsylvania. And they lived in Pennsylvania. I always was told around Harrisburg, I think, I'm not sure. And then they moved eventually to El Paso, Texas.
Okay.
My grandfather was a railroad man. Why they moved from place to place, I don't know.
Yeah.
She was a teenager in El Paso, I know.
Okay. So your mother didn't move to Tucson until she was late teenager or even an early adult?
Well, I always assumed that she didn't move to Tucson until she married.
Okay.
And she was, I think she was 30 or 28 when she married.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that gets us to your father then. What was his name?
Earl Clifford Johnson.
And who were his parents?
What?
Who were his parents?
They were James Riggin Johnson and Nancy Stout Johnson.
Nancy Mahedable Stout.
Nancy Mahedable Stout Johnson.
Right. And she was the daughter of Thomas Gooden Stout.
That's right.
Right. Who was descended from whom?
Edward Fuller on the Mayflower.
Edward Fuller on the Mayflower, that's right. So through the Bonhams, Fuller married a Bonham.
Right.
Bonham, then got in the Stout family, Stout.
Yeah.
Thomas Gooden Stout to Nancy Mahedable, married James Riggin Johnson, gave birth to Earl Clifford Johnson, who gave birth to you.
That's right.
Right. I think that makes you something like a 12th generation descendant from
The Mayflower.
from Fuller, right. So, and what did he do?
My father was a railroad man.
Okay. So you had railroad on both sides of your family, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so railroad looms large in our family history. Southern Arizona Railroad.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So where were you living when you were born? What part of Tucson?
My parents apparently had bought and owned a lot on the edge of the desert, which was the edge of the desert then in Tucson, at the corner of 19th Street and Park Avenue, South Park Avenue. They were the second house off the corner on Park. And
so this would have been the southeast corner of Park and 19th, I believe.
the south
East corner. Southwest corner.
southwest corner.
Southwest corner, that's right. Southwest corner of Park.
And they were the second. Their lot was the second lot, and they had
going south.
Yeah, and by that time I was. They had built a little adobe, and when I say little, it was just like a little cracker box, adobe house on the back of that lot, and it was unpainted. It was just bare adobe.
So when you say on the back of the lot, on the west end of the lot. It wasn't up against.
No, it was on the west end of the. It was
right.
up on the west. It was on an alley.
Right.
On the west end of the lot.
Okay. And that's where you remember your first memories of living are there.
Yeah, it was on that lot.
Okay. And what was the address? Do you remember?
908 South Park.
908 South Park. Okay. And then I know your dad passed away when you were 4.
Right.
With tuberculosis.
Uh-huh.
Right. Do you have any memories of him?
Not really, just from a couple of photographs, snapshots. No, I have absolutely no memory of my dad. I assume that the first 4 years of my life he was in and out of the hospital a lot.
Yeah.
So I probably wasn't around my dad that much.
Okay.
I have a picture of me on his lap outside, but he looked very ill then, even then. Yeah.
So you were basically raised by a single mom.
That's right.
Okay. So all of your childhood memories are of her, really.
Yes, a very devoted woman.
You'll tell us about her. Tell us about your mom.
Well, you see my mother when you look at me right now. I'm the image of her, including the shape of my hands, the feet. No one could be more like their mother than I am. And my father was very blonde and about 6 foot. Pure English on both sides. And my mother was about 5 foot or 5'1", black hair, brown eyes, and as Welsh and Irish as you can get. And she was, it looked like Mutt and Jeff when you saw them together. She was very slender all of her 45 years, and very musical.
She played the piano, right?
She played the piano, and she also had a violin. To tell you the truth, I never heard her play that violin, but she had it.
And how well trained was she as a musician?
I would have to say not well trained, but she read music, and she played the piano for the church services every week, and she loved to sing. And she sang when she was working around the house, and it was this deep alto voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any particular songs that you remember?
No, I remember she loved the gospel hymns, and she loved anything that Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy sang, anything that in the musicals. She just loved music. And my aunt did too, Brainerd's mother. She was very musical.
Okay, so this is your mother's sister. Right. What was her name?
Henrietta
Tonner,
and she was married, I think, 4 or 5 times.
Right.
So she had different names.
And she had how many children?
3 children: Brainerd, Ralph, and Janie.
Okay. Okay. Now, what stands out most about day-to-day living with your mother? What stands out the most? Did she work?
Just at home. Just at home.
So she had some source of income.
Yeah, apparently this man that lived at our house was a roomer and boarder. And I don't know that my father left anything. I was too young to understand those things at that time. But well,
he may have left a pension. You don't know. It may have been a small pension. There may have been.
Well, my mother was a very hands-on mom. She loved to hug me. She loved to touch me. She was an affectionate woman. And probably, they tell me, and I don't know this firsthand, but they tell me she was the most generous person in the world. We didn't have much. It was Depression, and she was a widow. But she would give away anything if somebody else needed it. She was very giving, very giving, very people-oriented, very talkative like I am. We are so much alike when I look back on it.
And so, as long as you remember, there was a boarder in the house?
As long as I remember.
Paid room and board?
Pretty much as long as I remember, from about my age, 7 or 8, I guess.
So, in Tucson, where were you born in Tucson?
I was born in Mrs. Hamilton's maternity home. Mrs. Hamilton was the aunt of the Hudgen family, of the Roark family, excuse me. The Roark family, yeah. The Hudgens or Roarks were so intermarried. It's hard to sort them. Um, Mrs. Hamilton was a nurse, and she owned a house, the second house from the corner of Highland and Fifth Street. And a lot of people at that time were born in her maternity home. If you weren't born in the Stork's Nest, which was the la-di-da place to be born, where your father was born.
That was a la-di-da place.
Yeah, the la-di-da.
You were in the hoi polloi place.
I was in the second best, I guess. Anyway, a bunch of us were born there. And Dr. Charles Peterson was my doctor that delivered me. And in those days, they kept women a couple of weeks prior and during delivery and after. So
you would live there for a couple of weeks?
My mother did.
I should live there.
Well, yeah, they kept you there. I think I'm not sure of this, but I think I was around 2 weeks old when Baba took me home.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the name, your mother's name was Irene?
Irene Elizabeth.
Okay, so that's where Irene comes from.
Uh-huh.
Where does Avonelle come from?
Well, Mrs. Hamilton, the nurse where I was born, had a niece living with her at that time who was about, I am told she was in her teens, about 16. And she just really loved my mother and was so kind to her during that time that she was there getting ready to have me. And her name was Avonelle, Avanel.
Oh, Avonelle.
Avonelle. And Mama told her, if I deliver a baby girl, I'm going to name her for you. But my mother spelled it differently.
I think she spelled it better.
I do too, Avonelle.
Right.
And so that's where I got that name.
Okay. Okay. Now, do you remember your mother cooking a lot?
Oh, yes, she was. Brainerd remembers my mother's cooking more than I do. He was 9 years older than I. And he adored his Aunt Irene. She was just he just loved her. And he would always say, well, Aunt Irene this and Aunt Irene that. And he said that my mother was a fabulous cook and especially made great cakes. Yeah. I remember Mama making, she'd take cornmeal and fry it, and that was so good. I loved that in the morning. And the only Mexican food she cooked was chorizo and scrambled eggs. But I think she was more Pennsylvania Dutch kind of cooking.
So yeah, we did talk about your dad's family when he originated where? Do you know?
He was what?
Your dad, where he came from.
Oh, he was born in California.
Okay.
Orange County, I think.
Orange County. Okay. And worked on the railroads. He was a railroad guy.
Oh yeah, his whole family.
Okay.
His father.
Now you mentioned Brainerd. Was Brainerd living in Tucson when you were a kid,
No.
or was he in El Paso?
I think he was born in El Paso, and I know he was raised there.
So when you saw him as a child, it was either you're visiting El Paso or him visiting Tucson.
Well, I don't remember his visiting in Tucson until he was graduated from high school, but we went, Mama and I would go by train, the Southern Pacific train, every single summer and spend 2 weeks at my grandparents in El Paso.
Okay.
Because after Daddy died, the widows of railroad men had lifetime passes on the train. So we would take a 2-week vacation there. So I was with my grandparents every year and loved visiting them. And that's when I would have time with my cousins.
Okay.
Brainerd.
And what'd you call your grandpa?
Daddy Tonner.
Daddy Tonner.
And my grandmother was Mommy Tonner.
Okay.
I don't know where it came from, but that's what we all called her.
And did you know your father's parents at all?
Not at all.
James Reagan Johnson and Nancy M. Heatherwell's family?
I don't ever remember seeing them.
Okay. Interesting. So then, you're growing up in this little adobe house on South Park. Describe the house, if you can.
Beside the house what?
Describe the house, if you can.
Oh gosh. It was very you looked like you were really poor. It was bare adobe walls, very small, very ugly little screen door to the outside.
Was there only one door to the outside?
That I remember, yes. There was a snapshot I think you kids have seen that just couldn't believe, where I'm outside as a probably 1-year-old toddler standing in what today would be called a playpen, but what it was bare boards with a little made into a square outside that my mama could put me in to keep me from getting strolling off. And it's all bare desert, no trees, no shrubs, no nothing, just bare dirt.
And then, but the house itself, how many rooms did it have? Do you remember?
Well,
obviously there was an extra bedroom for the boarder, so it must have 2 bedrooms.
There were 2 bedrooms, or 2 rooms that were used as bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, and a small living room.
Okay.
That's what I remember.
So there was inside plumbing?
Yes.
Yes, inside plumbing. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
And was it a real adobe house in the sense that it was kind of cooler in the summer because of the adobe? You remember being kind of not that hot?
An old desert adobe house.
Okay.
Adobe bricks.
With glass windows.
Yeah, well, I don't even remember the windows. Yeah, I guess so.
But your mom had a kitchen, inside kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had electricity.
Yeah.
Okay. What did she cook on? Do you know? Was it gas or electricity? You have any idea?
I'm sure it was gas, but I don't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was the neighborhood like? What were you
It
said
was great.
You lived on the west end of the lot. 2 lots. The second lot south of 19th on Park, on the west side of the road, and your house was on the west side of the lot. And then to the west, right behind it, was an alleyway that went north and south, parallel to Park, right?
Yeah.
All the way up to 22nd, as I recall. So what was around the house that you remember? Neighbors or businesses?
Well, I loved the house across the alley west of us. That was occupied by Mabel and Barney Moffett. He was also a railroad person. She was a world traveler, as I remember. But I loved their yard. I'd go across the alley into their backyard, because their house faced west on the street next to us. And they had a long grape arbor, I remember. It seemed long, with grapevines crawling all over the top and sides. It would bear grapes in season. And at the far end, away from my house, toward their house, at the end of the grape arbor, hung an Oya. And the Oya had one of the old clay dippers that hung by the Oya, and you could always get a cool drink out of that. I loved that grape arbor. And he had built an outdoor bedroom for the summers, because they were so hot. And
kind of an Arizona room?
Well, it was a wired structure on wooden legs, and you always built things up off the floor, off the ground, because of scorpions and snakes and stuff. And Mr. Moffett would sleep out there a lot of times at night because it would be so hot. But I loved their backyard. And when they'd invite me in, I loved going in their house. She had a curio cabinet in her living room that I would stand in front of, I remember, and just gaze at all her little curio statues and things that she had collected. I think she was a hunter, believe it or not. And I think she, I don't know, she was, looking back, I guess she was a mystery to me. They had one child, Laurel Moffett. He became a medical doctor, I think he was.
But their house, their property was more landscaped than yours?
Oh my goodness, yes.
You had essentially no landscaping on yours? Just hard pack?
Yeah.
Yeah, hard pan. Okay, but theirs was much more landscape.
Oh yes.
So would you say they were at a higher socioeconomic scale?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you said building the thing up above because of critters, did you running around the desert often running critters?
I went barefoot all summer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd hop from one shady spot to another because the sand was so hot. And there were always a lot of horny toads around.
Mm-hmm.
And we kids in the neighborhood would pick them up by the head
Mm-hmm.
and carry them around. At night, Mama always had our bed pulled out from the wall
Mm-hmm.
because of scorpions and bugs. And she'd always shake out my pillow to be sure nothing was in it at night. And we never let the bed clothing coverings touch the floor.
But on the other hand, you were running around the desert barefoot.
Oh yeah,
Barefoot. Okay.
barefoot. It was not ridiculous.
But do you remember outside running into scorpions or snakes? Or
No.
anything? Okay.
Just well, what I did run into were earthworms.
No. Okay. Well, sure.
Yeah, I saw a lot of those. I don't remember seeing a scorpion until I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my early childhood was spent in that house.
Right.
But somewhere, and I can't tell you when, another house was built on the front of that lot on Park Avenue. It was painted pink outside.
While you were still living in the other one.
Well, I don't remember it being built, but apparently so.
Mm-hmm.
Although in between times, it's a puzzle to me looking back, in between times, I lived on 22nd Street for a while. And it might have been during that time that the house was built on the front of the lot.
That could have been a source of income for your mom.
Yeah.
If she owned the
And we moved into that house on the front of the lot.
Oh, okay.
And then next door to me was Dorothy Aldrich.
Okay, well, but then did you rent out the house behind it then that you used to live
Yes,
in? Okay, so that was another source of income.
We rented it out to the Wessons. He was a police officer, and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
They were such a sweet couple. And so then we were living right with a fence between us right next to the house on the corner then of Park and 19th. And Dorothy Aldrich was my best friend then. She lived there.
Okay, now what side of your house was that? That was on the lot to the south of your house or across the alley?
Their house was on the corner of 19th and Park.
Okay.
Facing Park.
Okay, so it was just right next to yours, just north of yours.
The house on the front of the lot.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And her name was Dorothy Aldrich?
Dorothy Aldrich.
Uh-huh.
I grew up for a few years knowing them very well.
She was your same age?
Yeah, the same age. Played the piano. We played duets together. They had a player piano, and
Okay.
I had just a straight, regular piano. I used to love to go over, and the two of us would sit there and pump away on that player piano. And then we used to play dress up together, and Mom and I went to all the musicals we could afford to go to, and I'd come home and we'd plan dances imitating Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire.
So your house was big enough you had a piano in it?
Oh, yes.
And you just remember you don't remember when the piano came, you just always
No, it
remember
was just always there.
Always there. So
Not on the back lot. Back of the lot, I don't remember piano.
when you moved into the house on the front of the lot.
In the pink house, yeah.
And you don't remember how old you were about when that happened?
No, I sure don't. It was certainly before the age of 10 because I started piano lessons at 10.
Okay. And so Dorothy Aldrich is telling me about her parents.
Her father had the fix-it shop.
Mm-hmm.
He could repair anything. And it was a tiny little shop. He was an Anglo. Mm-hmm. We called him Daddy Aldrich. Mm-hmm. And her mother was a Mexican, Luisa. Mm-hmm. Wonderful woman. And she had been a widow, so she had she had 3 children, I think, that she brought to her second marriage, and then had Dorothy by her second husband.
Okay.
And I remember that house so well. It was a very homey place, and she had a wood stove. And every Friday she would make her week's flour tortillas. And I remember her so clearly with her little lump of dough, flipping it back and forth until it was real big, and just slapping it down on top of the wood stove, and I would just stand there salivating. Could hardly wait. And then her older sister was in high school, and her trunk of...
Whose older sister?
Dorothy's.
Okay.
Her older sister was in high school, and her contribution to Dorothy and me was her trunk of old clothes. And so we'd get into it and dress up, and then put on shows on her front porch with a blanket as a curtain. We did a lot of that. We had a lot of fun.
And then, so you and Dorothy were friends as long as you lived?
As long as we both lived, yeah.
Now, so tell me about, and then, so you started taking piano lessons when you were 10?
Yeah.
Okay. And who was your mother, your teacher, or did she hire
No,
a teacher?
Mrs. How could I ever forget her? Right at the moment, I can't think of her name, but she made me so scared. She was not a very kind person in her teaching.
Kind of a martinet.
And I started biting my fingernails. I was so nervous when I started lessons with her. And Mama sensed this very quickly. And she said, no, we're not going to continue this. We're getting another teacher. So she got a teacher named Martha something. And anyway, she was just the opposite. Very kind, loving, easy to work with. And of course, I just fell in love with it.
Now, your mother could have taught you. Do you know why she didn't?
No, I don't think she was that good a musician.
Okay.
No. And she was so ambitious for me, in a good way. She always had it in her mind that her daughter was going to go to college. And I'm glad I fulfilled that. Yeah.
Now, did you, or did she, I don't know what you wouldn't maybe have known, but did she quickly realize that you had the natural talent? At what point did that become aware to you and or your mom?
I don't know whether she did or not. She just loved listening to me.
And do you remember playing by ear from the beginning, just picking out?
Not really. Not really.
So there was quite a bit of training first before you started?
I think so. I didn't even think about playing by ear for a while. I don't remember when that started. It just seemed to be a natural flowing out of my music, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And what did you and your mom do for fun? What?
Oh, we saw every musical that came into town. We loved musical movies. And we'd walk through the desert down to the Opera House on Congress Street. Or to, I don't remember, I think it was mostly the Opera House where we go to. And we sit through 2 showings every time, because you could pay your 10 or 25 cents and you could sit there while the intermission came and then watch it again. And we oftentimes did that. Or we saw a lot of movies together. Mama and I were always together. She was, in fact, she probably was overprotective of me, afraid something would happen to me.
Well, I mean, it seemed like you had a piano, you had money for lessons, you had money to go to the movies. You probably had never ate out, probably.
Oh, what was that? No.
Never ate out.
Goodness, no. Our closest thing to that was jumping on the ice truck when it came by and getting the little ice chips.
Would all the neighborhood kids do that?
Oh, yeah.
And the driver knew it, didn't?
Oh, yeah.
He probably liked it.
Mr. Chadwick, yeah. In fact, he ended up being the man that lived on the corner from your dad, the Chadwicks.
So the ice truck would come by, and what were the ice chips? How were the ice chips created that you got?
Oh, well, the ice truck had great big blocks of ice, and he had these big tongs, and then he'd chip away to cut off blocks to fit the order that was in the window.
Mm-hmm. And so that would create ice chips
And it would create ice
in the
chips.
truck that you guys would
Yeah.
grab.
Yeah.
Okay. What else about the neighborhood do you remember like that? That was just kind of fun.
Oh, Mama loved growing things outside.
Mm-hmm.
She loved growing marigolds and zinnias and desert flowers. And she had a hollyhock hedge. And hollyhocks have these big blooms on them.
Mm-hmm.
And bees just love getting inside the bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dorothy and some of the other kids and myself, I don't remember who the other kids were. I'm so hoarse. But we would get these little jars with the lids on them,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep the lids off. And when we see a bee go inside the hollyhock, we put the jar on and catch the bee, and then put the lid on.
Mm-hmm.
We loved catching bees out of the hollyhocks.
So bees, horny toads. So there was a little bit of landscaping. I mean, your mother had the hollyhock hedge, right?
Yeah.
So there was some landscaping.
Oh, in the front there was.
Yeah.
We had a fish pond.
Oh, okay.
We had a fish pond,
Okay.
and we had goldfish in it.
Oh, you were being coy just now.
Yeah.
So in the front, you mean on the east side of the house?
On the east side of the lot.
Okay, so there was landscaping.
Yeah, up there, yeah, but none was ever done in the back.
Okay, well I thought the back of the lot was your house.
Well,
On the
that
west
was the
side.
first house.
Oh, okay.
This is later when we moved into the house,
Second. Oh, okay.
into the house on Park Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it had a fish pond and water lilies floating on it.
Mm-hmm.
I have some snapshots of Dorothy and me in bathing suits with our legs in the fish pond,
Mm-hmm.
and
So your mom would make 3 meals a day?
I don't. That's the funny part. That's part of my memory I don't have much of.
The food
Is-
you ate?
Is eating, and we certainly ate meals every day.
Mm-hmm. Where would she go to shop?
Well, there was a grocery store on, I think it was 9th Street, and his name was Joe Tang.
Mm-hmm.
So is that Japanese or Chinese?
Tang would be Chinese.
Big man. Very nice grocery store.
That was 10 blocks away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And no, yeah, it was somewhere along the line, Frank, and I have no idea where it came from. We ended up with a little blue Essex car, and it had a rumble seat. It was a little 2-seater, and it was old, or it seemed old at the time. So we probably went to the grocery store in that. I know we went to the neighborhood grocery store in it.
So that was a different store.
Yeah, that was a Mexican store about 2 blocks away from us.
More of a kind of convenience store.
Yeah,
type.
well, it was on the corner. It was just a little tiny Mexican store called Guzman's. And a Mexican family lived there and had a store. But a lot of the times we went to Joe Tang's, and he had a drawer at the cash register when he left, and he kept all of his little books with tabs in it for people who go, and everybody charged their groceries, and then when they had any money, they'd go in and pay on their bill. And I remember that grocery store. But those are the only 2 places I remember groceries. Mama got her chorizo over at Guzman's.
Did you get an allowance that you could spend it all?
Oh, heavens, no. In fact, one of my memories is Mama sitting at the kitchen table with a back of an envelope and a stub of a pencil, trying to figure out how much she could pay on the water bill and how much she could pay on the electric bill. And I think someone said she owed something like $80 on the grocery bill when she died. So no.
So she pretty much kept up. You know, she pretty much kept up.
She was a very honest woman.
So, fairly early on, did you play the piano together, you and your mom? Would you
No,
sit down and
I
play
never
piano?
did.
Really? Interesting.
Now, when I would start to practice, Mama would immediately drop whatever she was doing. I don't care what it was. And she'd come and sit down in the room and listen to me practice. And then when I had my lessons, she always sat and listened to my lesson.
And did you look forward to practicing every day, or was it kind of
Oh,
a
I
chore?
could hardly wait.
Oh,
Oh,
so you spent a lot of your spare time playing the piano. I guess,
oh
growing
yeah.
up, growing up.
I'd walk home from school with the kids, and they'd say, "Well, hurry up, because we'll play such and such." I say, "No, I'm going to go practice."
Wow.
I loved playing the piano.
And you were usually practicing whatever lesson, or were
Yeah.
you practicing other stuff?
No,
Just the
my
lesson you
lesson.
were given?
My lesson.
Oh, so the teacher must have loved you.
Well,
Because
I think she did.
You were always ready to go.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it.
But your mom never sat down and you never played a duet together.
Uh,
That's interesting. I would think she would have wanted to do that.
Maybe she wasn't that good of a musician. I don't know.
Or maybe at that point you still weren't up to her. Who knows? But
She was a good enough musician to play the hymns at church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you played the piano a lot. You went with your mom to the movies. What else did you do together?
Uh,
Did she sew at all?
yes, she sewed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She was she could paint a wall in a house. She could sew for me. She was she could crochet and knit.
Mm-hmm.
She had a lot of skills.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And probably Dorothy was your best friend at that time?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to stop here. And then the next session, we're going to start talking about school, how you went to school and that sort of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, I went to school.
And then also talk about your memories of Tucson at that time.
Okay.
But we'll take a break for now.
Okay.